Imposter syndrome, also known as imposter phenomenon or fraud syndrome, the imposter experience, is a concept describing high-achieving individuals who are marked by an inability to internalize their accomplishments and a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. The term was coined in 1978 by clinical psychologists Pauline R. Clance and Suzanne A. Imes. Despite external evidence of their competence, those exhibiting the syndrome remain convinced that they are frauds and do not deserve the success they have achieved. Proof of success is dismissed as luck, timing, or as a result of deceiving others into thinking they are more intelligent and competent than they believe themselves to be. Some studies suggest that imposter syndrome is particularly common among high-achieving women. Background: the imposter syndrome tends to be studied as a reaction to certain stimuli and events. It is not perceived to be a mental disorder, but it has been the topic of research for many psychologists. Though traditionally perceived as an ingrained personality trait, imposter syndrome has more recently been studied as a reaction to certain situations. Under this interpretation, it is a response experienced by many different people to situations that prompt such feelings. Though certain people are more prone to imposter feelings, experience them more intensely than most, and can be identified through the use of personality scales, evidence does not support imposter syndrome to be a distinct personality trait. The term imposter syndrome first appeared in an article written by Pauline R. Clance and Suzanne A. Imes, who observed many high-achieving women tended to believe they were not intelligent, and that they were over-evaluated by others. Another framework for understanding imposter syndrome is to rename it imposter experience. In the words of Clance, "If I could do it all over again, I would call it the imposter experience, because it's not a syndrome or a complex or a mental illness. It's something almost everyone experiences." Reframing the vocabulary shifts one's perspective to help them understand they are not isolated in this experience. In high achievers, Imes and Clance found several behaviors of high-achieving women with imposter syndrome. Diligence. Gifted people often work hard in order to prevent people from discovering that they are imposters. This hard work often leads to more praise and success, which perpetuates the imposter feelings and fears of being found out. The imposter person may feel they need to work 2 or 3 times as hard, so over-prepare, tinker and obsess over details. Says Young, this could lead to burnout and sleep deprivation. Feeling of being phony. Those with imposter feelings often attempt to give supervisors and professors the answers that they believe they want, which often leads to an increase in feeling like they are being a fake. If shown evidence of their competence or that they may suffer from a case of imposter syndrome, they tend to doubt themselves even more. Use of charm. Connected to this, gifted women often use their intuitive perceptiveness and charm to gain approval and praise from supervisors and seek out relationships with supervisors in order to help them increase their abilities intellectually and creatively. However, when the supervisor gives them praise or recognition, they feel that this praise is based on charm and not on ability. Avoiding the display of confidence. Another way that a person can perpetuate their imposter feelings is to avoid showing any confidence in their abilities. A person dealing with imposter feelings may believe that if they actually believe in their intelligence and abilities, they may be rejected by others. Therefore, they may convince themselves that they are not intelligent or do not deserve success. To avoid this, while studies primarily focused on women, recent studies have suggested that men may also be prone to imposter syndrome on similar levels. In addition, Clance herself, of the original research team, relates to the previous studies and suggests that the syndrome may be equally prevalent in males, but that men process and act on it in different ways to women. Students of color. A subpopulation that is prone to imposter syndrome are students of color, which are students with underrepresented racial and ethnic identities. The research regarding imposter experience has traditionally highlighted groups who are excelling in areas that were not always readily accessible to them. Likewise, students of color have not always had access to institutions of higher education, and this exclusivity can create valid feelings of imposter experience. In 2013, a study conducted at the University of Texas at Austin revealed that ethnic minority students are more likely to experience feelings of being an imposter in college. This is potentially dangerous because correlational analyses showed that imposter feelings amongst underrepresented college students was a strong predictor of mental health issues. If these feelings go unnoticed, students may suffer from anxiety, stress, and depression. It may be hard to outwardly identify these students because students who express feeling symptoms of imposter syndrome are often the most energetic, bright, and hard-working students amongst their peers. On the other hand, some scholars argue that feelings of imposter experience are potentially healthy and beneficial for career trajectory. This belief stems from understanding that everyone has a comfort zone, and personal, professional growth is likely to occur when one steps out of their comfort zone. Below are suggestions on resisting and combating feelings of being an imposter. Be kind to yourself. Seek support. Share your feelings. Do not use just and only when describing your work. Do not apologize for perceived mistakes. 1. Imposter experience can take form differently for everyone. Here are common signs that you may be experiencing feeling like an imposter. Quote, perfectionism, overworking, undermining your achievements, fear of failure, discounting praise. 2. Imposter experience can present itself through thoughts such as, I must not fail, I feel like a fake, I just got lucky. 3. Imposter experience is a common phenomenon. I have written 11 books, but each time I think, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. Single quote. Maya Angelou. Prevalence. Psychological research done in the early 1980s estimated that 2 out of 5 successful people consider themselves frauds, and other studies have found that 70% of all people feel like imposters at one time or another. It is not considered a psychological disorder, and is not among the conditions described in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, commonly known as the DSM. The term was coined by clinical psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes in 1978. People who have reportedly experienced the syndrome include Academy Award-winning actor Tom Hanks, screenwriter Chuck Lorre, best-selling writer Neil Gaiman, best-selling writer John Green, comedian Tommy Cooper, business leader Sheryl Sandberg, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, actress Emma Watson, and entrepreneur Mike Cannon-Brookes. 70% of people will experience at least one episode of this imposter phenomenon in their lives. Imposter syndrome is not a gendered experience. Demographics. The imposter syndrome is particularly common among high achievers. Another demographic group that often suffers from this phenomenon is African Americans. Being the beneficiary of affirmative action may cause a person who belongs to a visible minority to doubt their own abilities and suspect that their skills were not what allowed them to be hired. Imposter syndrome has been commonly reported by graduate students and scientists beginning tenure track positions. Management. Imposter syndrome is not a formal mental disorder and does not have a standard definition. Therefore, there has not been a clear consensus as to treatment options available. The syndrome has affected approximately 70% of the population worldwide. However, it often goes unrecognized. If it is not addressed, victims can develop anxiety, stress, low self-confidence, depression, shame and self-doubt. People who suffer from imposter syndrome tend to reflect and dwell upon extreme failure, mistakes and negative feedback from others. If not addressed, imposter syndrome can limit exploration and the courage to delve into new experiences. In fear of exposing failure, a number of management options are available to ease imposter syndrome. The most prominent is to discuss the topic with other individuals early on in the career path. Mentors can discuss experiences where imposter syndrome was prevalent. Most people who experience imposter syndrome are unaware that others feel inadequate as well. Once the situation is addressed, victims no longer feel alone in the negative experience. It is also noted that reflecting upon imposter feelings is key to overcoming this burden. Making a list of accomplishments, positive feedback and success stories will also aid to manage imposter syndrome. Finally, developing a strong support system that provides feedback on performance and has discussions about imposter syndrome on a regular basis is imperative for those experiencing impostorship. Therapy. Coherence therapy holds that unconscious emotional learning requires a person to act and respond with certain behaviors, moods, feelings, or beliefs. Unlike cognitive therapy, coherence therapy asserts that it can address our most fundamental learning stored in the sublimbic, right hemispheric, and emotion processing areas of the brain, which other talking psychotherapy and rational countermeasures cannot reach. Coherence therapists claim that effective treatment of imposter syndrome requires showing the person through experiential juxtapositions that the self-deprecation does not match the person's core emotional understanding. Writing therapy allows the person to organize their thoughts in writing. The written record of the person's objective accomplishments can enable the person to associate those accomplishments with reality, rather than simply dismissing the accomplishments internally. The written record can also remind the person of those accomplishments later. By these methods, writing therapy attempts to alleviate the person's sense of inadequacy. See also Dunning-Kruger effect, explanatory style, illusory superiority, Jonah complex, poser, tall poppy syndrome. Further reading: Grant, Sandy. The Brilliant Way Feminist Philosopher Simone de Beauvoir Outsmarted Imposter Syndrome. December 2016. Quartz Magazine. Clance, Pauline Rose. Imposter Phenomenon. Feeling Like a Fraud. Yorku. Alumni Magazine. York University. 9. October 2006. The Imposter Syndrome. Imposter Syndrome, BBC Radio 4. Woman's Hour. The 15th of February 2006. Pauline Clance's Imposter Phenomenon Reference List. Overcoming My Biggest Roadblock. Myself. Presented at the Women in Advanced Computing 2012 conference. Caltech Counseling Center. Julie Pagano. PyCon 2014 presentation. It's Dangerous to Go Alone. Battling the Invisible Monsters in Tech.